Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar hosted by Holborn Assets. My name is Malcolm Bell. Just to give you a very brief introduction, Holborn Assets is a large, independent, international financial services company. We're talking to you today from Dubai. We have offices throughout the Middle East and indeed the Far East, Europe and America. For myself, I've got over 23 years industry experience, 10 years in the UK, and the rest of the time I've been in the Middle East. At Holborn, we're passionate about wealth creation and the preservation of wealth and indeed family protection. And today we're going to talk about how do you preserve and protect wealth. And so I'd like to introduce you to Darren Watson, a senior underwriter from Friends Provident International, who will give us an overview of life and critical illness protection. Darren, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thank you very much. Just share the screen. Hopefully this works. All see the slides okay?
Yes, thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for firstly taking the time to allow me to present to you today. The presentation will focus on financial wellness in the times of illness. And it will look at a Friends Provident product offering, which we provide through our key brokers, such as Holborn, to customers across the GCC and in the UAE, that provide you, hopefully, with peace of mind, should anything happen to you in terms of serious illness, or should anything happen, unfortunately, in terms of death. So as Malcolm said, my name is Darren Watson. I'm actually the head of Underwriting and Claims for Friends Provident International globally. And we have offices in the Isle of Man, Dubai, Hong Kong and Singapore. And I've worked for Friends Provident now for 20 years, 7 years here in Dubai. And as an insurance company, Friends Provident International have over 40 years experience of dealing with life insurance markets across the globe. So hopefully there'll be some use from today in terms of raising some awareness and hopefully some opportunities for you to understand the importance of the protection benefits that we can offer. So if we get straight into it. Experiencing a small IT glitch. Okay, so apologies for that short delay, maybe a Wi-Fi connectivity issue, but the main points for today should take probably about half an hour. We're going to look at 6 key areas. The first one, just some research findings that hopefully will pull out some startling statistics that make you realize the size of a protection gap that is experiencing within the GCC. Secondly, we'll look at critical illness versus medical insurance, and we'll highlight some key differences in cover and maybe dispel some myths regarding how the two can work together and how they can supplement each other in preventing financial burden and supporting you, your family and your loved ones. We'll focus on a potential solution, which is our Friends Provident International Middle East Protection Policy. And we'll talk about all the benefits and how you can apply for that product. We'll then look at other international protected Middle East benefits. So these are not benefits that you elect, they're benefits that are built into the policy that give extra value to you and your family. We'll look at claim statistics, which is our commitment as a company to you to be there to support you at the time you need it most. And then there'll be a time for questions. There is a Q&A functionality at the bottom, I think, as one of the menu toggles if you do want to write questions in, and I can address them at the end, or Malcolm and I can address them at the end. Or alternatively, hopefully, there'll be enough time to open the forum up and you can ask any questions. On a final note, if you want to keep your questions, individual, if they're personal questions about your circumstances and underwriting, then they can be addressed after, either via email or separate calls if need be. So sharing our research findings. The next couple of slides are just purely looking at research that Friends Provident International did in 2018 and 2019. And what this slide shows is we asked a customer demographic across all ages, all nationalities, all ethnic races, do you have life insurance and do you have critical illness insurance? And you can see that 51% of respondents said yes to having life insurance, and only 24% of individuals responded to having critical illness cover. Now, as an insurer, and Malcolm as a broker, we've worked in this industry long enough. We realise that that is a huge gap, and we would like to help address that, and we would like to help support our valued customers by providing them with the financial support that they need should they die, or should they fall seriously ill, and how that can impact you. So on the back of this, out of the 648 respondents, we asked them, why don't you have critical illness? What are we as an insurance brokerage doing that doesn't mean that you're avidly looking to buy insurance, and how can we try and address that gap? So as you'll see, just over 30% said that the medical cover provided by your employer was sufficient. Just under 30% said other, please specify. You'd be surprised to learn that a lot of those were no comments, no additional comments were put in. But the main other two reasons were lack of access and a perception that critical illness claims aren't necessarily paid. So that's something that we as an insurer are trying to address, and to try and reassure our clients that we are there when you need this financial support the most. 15% not familiar with what critical illness is. Hopefully presentations and sessions like today will help raise awareness. 13% it's too expensive, and 11% said it's not required. So again, as an insurer, you can see there's a big chunk, other, not familiar, and we believe that our products can address that gap and provide both you and the brokers with suitable financial solutions to ensure that you are protected. And the final slide on the statistics, which the question was deliberately asked to try and demonstrate, we all know somebody who has had a significant change of health. So this question looks at, do you know anybody? It could have been a family member, it could have been a friend, a colleague who's had cancer or has had a vascular problem. So, cerebrovascular events like strokes, or we're looking at heart attacks, coronary artery bypass grafts. Do you know anybody who's had any of these type of significant and serious illnesses in the last 5 years? Just under 70% said yes. But if we go back to the other slide, there's a huge gap of people that are aware that these events happen, but they're not protecting themselves necessarily against this to be in the best possible place to deal with not only the physical side of the illness, but the mental side of the well-being of dealing with a significant change. So we'll move on, just having some key slides there to highlight some startling facts. But if we look at critical illness versus medical insurance, on the flyer that that Malcolm circulated, there's dread disease insurance. Now that was what critical illness was called when it was launched in South Africa in 1983. Dread disease, horrible name for a product. It covered 4 key critical illnesses. You were given a lump sum if you had cancer, stroke, coronary artery bypass grafting, or you were diagnosed as having a heart attack. So obviously, 1983 to date, the policies have evolved significantly. You're covering upwards of 30 critical illnesses now. But whilst the policies have evolved, medical treatments have evolved, medical diagnostic techniques have evolved. So what we're actually finding is more and more people are being diagnosed with things like cancer earlier. More and more people are being treated earlier. More and more people are surviving these critical, serious illnesses. So if we have a look at some of the statistics here, 50% of people now survive a form of cancer for at least 10 years after diagnosis. In 2017, 67.5 million people were still alive that had suffered a stroke previously. 61% of these were under the age of 70 and 10% under the age of 44. Now, the reason we're quoting age 70 there is most people will still be in employment. Most people will still be financially dependent upon a salary. Most people under 70 are what we would classify as an insured population. Our critical illness benefit runs to age 70. There's a number of key messages there that show that there is a gap and there is a risk in terms of these conditions. And the longer people survive, the more you will need financial support to deal with this. So the last 2 ones, in 1968 in the UK, 7 out of 10 heart attacks resulted in death. But in 2021, 7 out of 10 people are surviving heart attacks. Now, an interesting report I read in the last week, that was a publication by the British Journal of Cancer, goes on to say that in the next 10 years, they believe that 1 in 3 men will be diagnosed with cancer and 1 in 2 women will be diagnosed with cancer. So are we prepared? Our slogan on the front said, life changes, be prepared, be protected. So are we in a position where we think we have all the cover that we need? So we'll move on to look at what is the difference between critical illness and medical insurance. As expats living abroad or non-Indigenous people, we often rely on private medical insurance to cover our hospital bills, our medical bills. We believe that they will extend to cover us should we fall ill and should we need significant treatments, all sorts of scans in terms of cancer diagnosis, but then radio and chemotherapy. And what we'll find is most insurance, medical insurance, does cover that far. However, most medical insurance has a limit per year. How much treatment could you use in a year and then have still an excess liability for hospital bills? So whilst it says no there for critical illness cover, what critical illness cover does is provide you with a lump sum. So in discussions with Malcolm, you'd be looking at, I'm interested in critical illness, I need lump sum to protect me, my family. And there's a list of things here that you would need to consider: your rent, mortgage, utility bills, outstanding loans and debts, school fees, support, in terms of assisting your family, if you're buying cover, purchasing cover for your non-earning spouse or, a spouse that's a stay-at-home parent. There's things like, would they need support in terms of, assisting with things around the residential property. So this lump sum, which can be in the region of 7 to 10 times your annual income, we can look at how much that is based on affordability versus what you actually need to protect should you be diagnosed with a serious illness, and should you need to take time off work, should you need to make reasonable adjustments. If you have a stroke and you benefit from having maybe a less invasive stroke, so in terms of complications and recovery, you may well struggle with things like coordination, dizziness, balance issues that will take 12 to 18 months for a full recovery to take place. Or the full recovery may be that your function in the future is limited. A lump sum policy will help you make adaptations around the house, adaptations in a motor vehicle. It will give you funds that will allow you to concentrate on rehabilitation rather than maybe returning to work immediately. And then there's the other thing, potentially a worse case scenario would be where you can't return to work at the same level of functioning that you previously held. So you may be in a very senior management position, you may be working as a director, but following a stroke, does your mental capacity allow you to function in that role? Can you function at a lower role to keep yourself physically and mentally fit, but your earnings capacity may well reduce? So a lump sum critical illness cover that can cover you for up to 1.25 million is a valuable way of protecting your future and the future of your family. So that slide there was really quite visually strong to show that, a lump sum policy versus a medical insurance policy with caveats on access to treatments and limits of what is under your policy per annum. You can see how the two work together and how they can supplement each other in solid financial planning. So what do we offer as a solution? May have put some fear factor in there, so I apologize, but this is the real life that I live and breathe every day, unfortunately. So rest assured, there is a solution there. And at Friends Provident, along with Holborn, we understand the importance of having peace of mind, having that comfort that if anything happens to you, you're protected and that your family and your loved ones are protected. So the next 5-6 slides, we will look at the insurance policy that Friends Provident International offer, a life assurance policy. It's a menu policy that allows you to choose from a range of benefits so that your protection needs are covered and the protection needs of your family are covered. Now, we're living in a global pandemic still, 18 months, nearly 2 years in. And one thing COVID has really, really reinforced to everybody, more so for those in the insurance industry that, that deal with some of the issues regarding how bad COVID can be, is that life is unpredictable. And unfortunately, illness and death don't discriminate. If you're vaccinated, you can still get COVID. And unfortunately, some people can still get it and get serious complications, the vast majority won't, but those that are unvaccinated are more exposed. Those over certain age limits are more exposed. Those with comorbidities, with diabetes potentially, there are additional risk factors that show that your medical profile really means that, you are more susceptible to having a more serious form of COVID. So it's really helped reshape people's mindsets towards life insurance. And we're hoping that, the offering that we can present to you via Holborn is something that will be of benefit and will be something that you will consider. So the product itself is available in the GCC across these 5 countries. To qualify, you must just be a resident for at least 9 months during the past 12 and expect to be a resident for 9 months during the next 12. And you must be able to document that you have either a national ID card or a residence visa. There are some underwriting rules if people wanted to learn a little bit more about how that works that can be shared separately, but that's just the qualification, and we do cover the UAE under the product, but obviously that's a separate conversation. So what is available under this? You can see that the first 7 bullet points, they look at the products that we offer. So life cover, a lump sum payment on death, life cover with a rider benefit of total and permanent disability, both available on a level basis, life or early critical illness, level cover. So that is an accelerated, it will pay either on life or diagnosis of one of 35 illnesses. Critical illness cover, which is just a standalone critical illness cover. There is no full life cover payable. There is a nominal benefit payable to your next of kin should you die from a critical illness. Life cover decreasing, life cover with total and permanent disability decreasing, and life or early critical illness decreasing. So you can see it's a menu product that offers 2 different approaches. So as your financial burden potentially decreases over life, you could look at a decreasing policy. They can be used more for like loan products or mortgage liability where there's a reducing balance. And the last 2 points just confirm that, an illustration and application form is available for this multiple concurrent benefits. So you can apply using one application. You could say, I want life cover and I want life or early critical illness cover to protect me and my family. It helps keep cost controls in place. So you can write multiple benefits through one application. That can be for 2 lives. You could have a husband and a wife. They could have a joint policy, individual policies, all through the same application form. So we try to make it as simple as possible for you to access this product. The next slide is just looking purely at the basics of the product. There's a lot of heavy detail on there that you can look at. The crux of the matter is that for each of the benefits we looked at, you can choose from 3 currencies. You can choose from US dollars, Great British pounds, or euros. You can opt for life cover for up to $32 million or the currency equivalent. We will go higher. But for critical illness and total and permanent disability benefits, the level of cover of 1.25 for critical illness and 2 million for total and permanent disability are capped. There's just generally no financial justification for potentially going higher on those 2 benefits. And then on the left, it shows that you must be aged 18. So it says 19 age next birthday. That's what A and B stands for. So you must be aged 18 to apply. For life cover, you can apply all the way up to 64, 65 next birthday, and you can apply for cover with no limit on term up to age 80 at the end. For critical illness, the maximum age at entry is 60 next birthday, and critical illness runs until age 70. And for total and permanent disability, the age limit for application is slightly lower at 55 next birthday, but the cover itself still runs to age 65. And the one key thing that's not mentioned on this slide is that this product is entirely portable, which is one great benefit as potential expatriates, is that whilst you could currently be residing in Qatar and you're living there and you take this policy out now, in 5 years, you could be working anywhere else in the world. And so long as you keep continuing to pay your regular monthly or annually premiums, the policy will remain in force. You will be covered. There is no requirement. There is a requirement to keep your records up to date in terms of telling us. But if you move country and 12 months later you tell us, there's no restrictions on that. The policy will still continue and you'll be covered globally. So if we look at each of the next couple of slides, just looks at the actual benefits available. So life cover or life cover with a rider benefit of total and permanent disability. So life cover does what it says. It pays out a lump sum should you die during the term of the policy. So if you apply for life cover for $1 million over 30 years and you die within that 30-year term, the life cover policy ceases. We pay out the full amount to your next of kin. Now, Malcolm will help structure the nature of the policy. You can nominate beneficiaries so that we pay the beneficiary. That can be as many beneficiaries you want, so long as it adds up to 100%. It can be set up under a trust. There's ways around ensuring the policy is structured so that on receipt of a death certificate, we will validate the claim and we will make the payment to whoever is nominated as the rightful legal person on the policy. Now, every life cover policy comes with a built-in, no additional cost. It comes with an accelerated benefit called terminal illness. So if you're diagnosed and you don't have critical illness, let's use a cancer example. If you're diagnosed with cancer and it's an advanced stage, say stage 4 cancer, and you get told that unfortunately, the medical course of treatments that you've been having, they're no longer responding. There is no further treatment pathways, and regrettably, they will now just give palliative care, which is just to control your pain, give you a quality life for the remainder of the life that you have. If your life expectancy is deemed to be less than 12 months by 2 medical specialists, then we will pay out the life cover in full as an accelerated benefit, as long as there's over 18 months left in the policy term. And you'll probably be surprised to learn that we actually do get quite a number of claims, and quite a number of claims at a very young age for people that are diagnosed with terminal conditions, and the majority of them are cancer. Total and permanent disability is a rider benefit. The slide reconfirms that the maximum amount under that is 2 million. So when we go back to the menu products, if you're interested in total and permanent disability, but you want more life cover than maybe 2 million, you could do a 1 million life cover policy and a 2 million life and total permanent disability policy to give you the coverage you need, all through one application or with the same question sets being used to the underwriting assessment. Now, total and permanent disability is it's a very comprehensive benefit under the Friends Provident International product. It covers total and permanent disability through impairment of daily activities of living before age 65. So if you experience any medical condition, accident, injury, illness that results in you being totally and permanently disabled for the remainder of your life to perform 3 of 6 tests, and these tests are things like walking with a crutch for 20 feet, being able to climb a set of stairs with a crutch, 12 stairs up and down, being able to bend and pick something up, being able to lift and carry a 5-kilogram bag, being able to use a mobile phone or a laptop, and being able to take on or take off a shirt or a coat or some article of clothing. If you fail 3, then that pays out in full and the policy would cease. But also on the back of this total and permanent disability benefit covers 8 additional conditions. Now, these are all classed as being permanent disabilities. So it covers blindness, chronic organic brain disease, deafness, congestive heart failure, which means you're unable to New York Heart Scale 3, you're unable to walk more than 20 feet without experiencing shortness of breath, loss of speech, paralysis, respiratory failure, which obviously, given the current COVID pandemic, one of the things associated with that is respiratory failure, and severe mental illness. So these are all disabilities that stop you from functioning at a capacity that you've previously done. Now, the 8 conditions I've listed there have a definition. So severe mental illness must have been a condition that's been present for 12 months and must result in full-time care. So you can see that these are very debilitating conditions. Blindness, completely blind, would impact you from doing your job. Deafness, complete loss of hearing in both ears. This product covers those 8 conditions, plus that impairment of daily activities should you experience any sort of illness or disability that renders you permanent and totally disabled. And one of the statistics within the UAE, which extends wider into the GCC, is that one of the leading causes of disability is road traffic accidents. It does support driving on some very difficult and maybe different terrains than what we're used to. So it's a very comprehensive product, and that is a rider that's added onto our life cover benefit if you choose, and it comes at an small additional cost to life cover. Moving on to the crux of the presentation today is to look at critical illness cover. We've talked about how critical illness has evolved. It's now time to look at what it actually covers. So critical illness covers 35 illnesses. It covers the 4 main: stroke, heart attack, coronary artery bypass, cancer, and I'll show you on another slide the full 35 it covers. But there is a 90-day wait period, and that's purely there as sort of an anti-selection to protect insurers, so that if somebody has maybe a lump or a bump and they've not consulted a medical practitioner, and then they take out a critical illness policy and then immediately go and consult somebody. So after 90 days of elapse from the policy start date, you are covered in full. And should you be diagnosed with one of these 35 conditions, then we will pay out the full sum assured. If you choose standalone, there is a 28-day survival period. So you must survive 28 days. However, if you choose life or earlier critical illness as a product, then obviously the requirement of 28-day survival is less of a meaningful period, because if you die, we will pay out the life cover. So you're covered one way or another. And under the policy, we will cover $1.25 million or currency equivalent under this plan. So again, under the menu products, if you wanted more life cover, you might do $750,000 life, 1.25 million life or early critical illness. Should you die, there's a $2 million payout. Both policies cease. Should you get a critical illness, the policy for life or early critical illness pays out 1.25 million to you as the life assured. It's your benefit. And then you're still protected with your life cover for 750,000 under the remaining policy. And the key point there is that if you do have a critical illness, it's very unlikely you'll get life cover at standard rates, or very unlikely get life cover within the next 5 to 10 years. There'll probably be postponement periods or significant loadings applicable. So less about the structure. Here's what we cover. Like I said, there's 35 critical illnesses there. In blue, we highlight 4, heart attack, stroke, cancer, multiple sclerosis. But you can see it covers, mental function with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, covers respiratory failure, it covers 3rd-degree burns, traumatic head injuries. So there's an element of accident protection here as well. Blindness, deafness, all the 8 conditions that were covered under total and permanent disability are covered in the 35 illnesses we offer. And we cover things like kidney failure, liver failure, heart failure, being placed on a waiting list for a major organ transplant to do with any sort of heart, lung, liver replacement, kidney replacement, and you will be paid out in full. So it's a very comprehensive product. And I think that should show that ultimately, if you're diagnosed with, say, cancer, your medical insurance, if you went, let's use, say, breast cancer as a female life, if you attended a doctor and said, I've had a lump in one of my breasts for the last few weeks, they investigate that, your medical insurance will pay for the consultations, it will pay for the investigations, any mammograms, ultrasounds, x-rays, it will pay for that. You will be given biopsies, you'll have a confirmed diagnosis, and a treatment pathway will be put in place that may well be a mastectomy with reconstructive surgery. It may well be radio and chemotherapy if it's a less advanced tumor. And then there'll be lots of follow-ups, hormone receptors, there'll be medications that might be needed. So your medical insurance should cater for the vast majority, if not all of that. Depends on your policy limits, and there's obviously more favorable and less extensive covers out there. Now, what happens when you're being diagnosed? You might not be in a position to work. It's a very emotionally distressing time, especially if you have family and you're trying to protect them from what you're dealing with at the moment. It puts a big burden on you. You may well not be able to work. You're going in to have potentially a breast removed. How much time off work would you need? How much time, away from your day-to-day job would you need? Now, that's where the medical insurance policy doesn't really help pay for school help. It doesn't help pay for tutors. It doesn't help pay for taxis to and from wherever you need to go to. It doesn't help with the ultimate financial burden away from medical expenses. And that's where the critical illness policy that's going to give you a lump sum can really help you focus on what you need to focus on, which is your recovery. Do you want to take the time and recover, or do you want to jeopardize a long-term recovery by actually, not giving your full support and your full focus on engaging in rehabilitation plans that could involve, long-term physical therapies? There's always a rush to try to get back to normal, but that's primarily driven by a financial burden. So we're hoping, that highlighting the coverage that's under this policy, plus how it can work with a medical insurance plan, will really dispel some of, the myths behind what benefits critical illness can provide. Now this slide, I'm conscious of time, but this slide, this is just more to look at what is involved for you as a customer. So, Malcolm and his team, as administrative team, will talk you through the underwriting process and the application process. But in order to apply for this, you fill in an application form. There's 9 sections, ranging from personal details, your health, your family history, your occupation, whether you're involved in any sports or pastimes, whether you do any travel, and some financial details about, existing cover that you own or how much your annual salary is. That allows underwriting to complete an initial assessment. We will then look at, have you made any disclosures? Maybe you've said you're on treatment for high cholesterol, so we might want more information about that. Maybe a report from your doctor, or we might send you for a medical to get your cholesterol checked. But once you go above certain thresholds, there's things that are called non-medical underwriting limits. And what they are is, if you're totally clean bill of health, you answer every question on the application, no, but you're of a certain age and you're applying above a certain level of cover, then we will ask you to go for a medical with some blood tests. That medical is, a repeat of the questions on the proposal form that the doctor will ask you. And there's then an examination conducted by a doctor which looks at your height and weight. There will be a physical examination to look at, say, your abdomen, an analysis of your breath to see if you're looking and breathing correctly. They'll monitor the beats of your heart. Is it beating regularly in rhythm? They'll take your blood pressure. You'll do a urine sample, which will be tested for things like protein, sugar, and blood. And then, depending on how much cover you want and the age of you at the time of applying, we may well go for blood sugars, or we may well go for cholesterol tests, or we may well look at liver function tests. But that's the journey that you would go through. And on receipt of that, we would then say, this is our underwriting evaluation. And that can range from anything from, you are in a clean bill of health with standard rates, to good medical checkup. It's paid for by Friends Provident. You may well, in certain circumstances, have to pay for it up front, but we always reimburse the clients in full. And then we issue the decision, and you can accept the terms and start the policy, and have the financial peace of mind that you need. So they're the benefits that you can choose. What are the other benefits that come in that are built into the policy? So one thing that's built into the policy is children's critical illness. This protects your children. We will pay out 10% of your critical illness sum assured. So if you have a life or early critical illness or a standalone critical illness, this benefit is included automatically, whether you have children now or whether you have children in the future. We will pay 10% of your sum assured up to $15,000, whichever is lower. And on each policy, so if you take out a policy with us tomorrow, underneath that policy, we would cover up to 3 claims for 3 individual children. You couldn't claim for the same child twice. It's inclusive, as in, it doesn't come off your sum assured. So if you want $500,000 life or early critical illness and one of your children is unfortunate to be diagnosed with one of the 26 conditions that we cover, then we will pay that $15,000, but your cover stays at $500. It doesn't get deducted. You don't have to nominate children at the outset. So even if you have children now, even if you don't have children, you don't need to nominate them. You just notify us, should one of your children experience a change in health. So it does cover unborn children, but the child has to be age 1 to 17 to be covered under the policy. And the good thing is we cover 26 conditions. A lot of competitors won't. They won't cover anything to do with accident risk, which is a huge risk for children. So blindness, deafness, loss of limb, traumatic head injury, paralysis. These are all things that we still feel that should be covered. This will impact you as a parent. This will impact you in your job. This is like a gesture to say, we appreciate the impact this has on you, and we would like to support you whilst you're dealing with this. There is a double payment. So if you do take out a joint life policy as husband and wife, then if one child is diagnosed with one of the 26 conditions, we would pay out each parent up to $15,000. So there is a total payment available if both parents are covered for $30,000 per child, up to a maximum of 3 children. The next benefits covered are something called accidental death benefit and advanced claim payment. Very quickly, the accidental death benefit is during the application process. So we receive your application form and the clock starts ticking. whilst we underwrite you, whilst we collect all your evidence from Malcolm and the team in terms of identification, if you need a medical, this covers you for 250,000 or your sum assured, whichever is lower. So if you're applying for $100,000 and you die from an accident during the application process, we would pay out 100,000. If you're applying for 500,000, we would restrict that to 250. It's valid for 60 days or until the policy is issued, whichever comes first. So that's just a free benefit, that gives you peace of mind whilst you're going through the application, which can be, straightforward. It can be within 24 hours. Depends. If you need a medical test, it can take a little bit longer. The advanced claims payment is to do with death claims. So it's more for your next of kin or whoever's dealing with the administration of your estate. We understand repatriating bodies, dealing with Ministry of Health in different countries. There are costs associated with getting documents attested. There's costs associated with getting documents approved. There's costs associated with getting the right checks done to make sure that bodies can be repatriated, or, there's costs that fall outside of dealing with just the full death of a loved one. So what we would do there is, on receipt of a certified copy of a death certificate, on policies where the sum assured is in excess of $100,000, we pay $10,000 to the nominated beneficiary trustee. However Malcolm and the team structured a policy, we would pay that to them. And then they have the money then to deal with, potentially closing bank accounts. If you've got a joint account, your assets could be frozen. So this is another way potentially of getting money to individuals so that they can deal with the difficult and emotional process of passing of a loved one. And the final benefit that's included is Best Doctors. So Best Doctors says world-class second medical opinion provided by Best Doctors, and it's a free benefit. Now, there's 3 levels of cover for Best Doctors. There's interconsultation, which basically is an expert second opinion. So at Best Doctors, if you got diagnosed with a condition, and it doesn't have to be one of the 35 conditions covered under the policy, it can be any condition you're diagnosed with, you can confidentially and anonymously ring Best Doctors and say, I've been diagnosed with this condition, I'd like access to interconsultation. You quote your Friends Provident number, and they would put you in touch with a case manager. The case manager collates all your medical reports and evidences that you will share with them. And then what they do is they use their database of over 50,000 medical practitioners and specialists globally, and they will find the best person with the best expertise to review your file, and you will get a bespoke report that looks at recommendations for your treatment. Now, this is confidential, but we have had clients who've reached out to us to feedback how wonderful this service is. We've had people who've been diagnosed with cancer. We've had people that we paid claims for cancer, and they've accessed Best Doctors. They've been told it's a stage 4 tumor. They've been told their prognosis is not favorable. There are some treatments, but really it's about extending quality of life. They've been to Best Doctors. They've had a second opinion. They've been put in touch with oncologists in America. Those oncologists have talked about trial medications that are available in the US that aren't available within the GCC, the UK, Asian markets. And they've been put in touch with those individuals. And what we've been told is that the prognosis and diagnosis was wrong. Now, that doesn't happen a lot, but it's a free service. Would you want to use it? Would you want to get a second opinion? If it doesn't cost you anything, why not? Ask the Expert is a second cover under there. It's basically a confidential helpline. So if you can imagine, you've just been told you're diagnosed with cancer. It's this type of cancer. This is the radiotherapy. This is chemotherapy. This is your treatment pathway. Your mind will be racing. This is a function where you can ring and they will put you in touch with a specialist. And if you want to ask questions about what does this mean? What is this medical terminology? What does this treatment mean to me? What's likely to be the consequences of this treatment? So you fully understand this is another free service. And then the final thing is Best Care. So obviously, if you've gone through interconsultation and they've provided you with a report recommending different treatments or confirming the treatments, under this Best Doctors cover, Find Best Care is they will actually find the best medical facility in the world to provide you with the treatments that they're recommending, which is great. However, the cost of travel, the cost of the treatments, and the cost of, taking your family or staying in America for a month while you have these treatments is not covered by the IPME policy. However, if you've taken a lump sum critical illness policy and we've paid you out $500,000 because you've been diagnosed with cancer, you can use those funds to further source medical treatments that might fall outside of your medical insurance. So again, the message here is you can really see how the two go hand in hand. So that's the three additional benefits that, like I said, they're built into all policies. The best doctors is for you, your spouse, and for any children living with you. So it's not just you, and like I said, it's not just the 35 illnesses. If you're diagnosed with any condition and you want peace of mind with a second opinion, you can use this service. So as we progress, we're coming towards an end. Claim statistics, this is our promise to you and our brokers that we will pay claims and that we do honour claims. As you can see, we generally publish our stats in a rolling 3-year period. So 97% of all life or terminal illness claims are paid in the last 3 years. Under critical illness and total and permanent disability, 89% are paid. The benchmark for the industry is 90 to 92%, so we're there or thereabouts. The reason why we don't pay claims on critical illness, non-disclosure from clients. So clients will misdisclose their medical records. They won't tell us that maybe they're hypertensive and they're on treatment for cholesterol, or they've consulted a doctor several weeks before, and then a year into the policy, they have a heart attack. We look back and say, your underwriting decision was standard rates because you didn't tell us anything. Had we known that you were on X, Y, and Z and that your cholesterol was uncontrolled, then we would have rated you, or we wouldn't have offered terms. And that's why, unfortunately, these statistics aren't 100%. It's very sad working in claims because you want to pay 100%, but we have to protect the costs for all customers. To keep insurance cheap, we need to make sure that we're only paying valid claims and not anything that's fraudulent. So on there, you can see the average cost of a claim. There are some startling statistics that show you that the youngest life claim is 39, the youngest critical illness claim is 31, the youngest terminal illness claim is 36, and then you can see the oldest ones. And again, the startling one that jumps out is oldest terminal illness claim is 49. What I can tell you from the last 7 years of working in Dubai, globally, 60% of our claims for critical illness and total and permanent disability are for cancer, 30% are for cardiovascular things like heart attack or stroke, and 12% from other conditions such as renal failure, traumatic head injury, paralysis, things that we've discussed. Under life cover, 40% of deaths are caused by cancer, 35% are caused by cardiac or cerebrovascular incidents, and 25% comes from others. And in the last 12 months, we've paid 6 COVID claims. We've had 6 people who've died from COVID, varying ages. We've had people that have had medical problems like respiratory problems. They've had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so they've been taking lots of oxygen daily anyway. So they're more susceptible. But then we've had healthy people that haven't been vaccinated that have claimed at varying ages as well. And we've also paid out, a significant percentage on accidents and suicide. So the policy, is very comprehensive. It covers a lot of conditions, and we, I hope this slide supports that we do pay out. In terms of gender, on life cover, 80% of our claims are for male, 20% for female. You could argue that that's expected, given that females generally have a longer life expectancy than males. Also is probably more reflective of our book of business, which, is 60-70% male versus 30 to 40% female. But this is why we always promote that, if you've got a non-earning spouse or you have a spouse, cover them, husbands, housewives, have the protection for them as well. But under critical illness, 55% men and 45% women. So even from a lower demographic in terms of, X thousand of policies on risk versus X thousand for women, the split is pretty consistent. And that's going back to the start, is that life is unpredictable. Illness doesn't discriminate. So I think that brings towards the end of my, should I say, short session, my 40-minute session. Sorry, Malcolm. Malcolm, is there anything you would like to add, or you want to open it up? Or
no, that was really helpful. I will just share an anecdotal story from some time ago. I've had 2 instances in the past where I've taken checks to families where they've had either life or critical illness claims. And even as I'm telling you the story, it's actually quite an emotional experience to take a check to a family where they've lost a loved one, and without without having the good common sense to protect themselves and their families and their spouses and their children, they would have been some financial constraints. And so there's always a risk, you know, I've got so far, I've managed without it. But when you look around and you look at your family, you look at your kids, it's an investment to protect them and to ensure that, heaven forbid, worst case scenario, something should happen to you and or your partner, singly or jointly. It's that peace of mind knowing that you've done the right thing by protecting your family. It's a massive thing to do. If we have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A. Does anybody have any questions for us? Doesn't seem so. Darren, perhaps you could just explain, because the message on the invitation to people was about COVID.
Yeah.
What's Friends Provident's policy, and how is that? How are people cocooned against COVID, please?
Yeah, apologies. That was one of the key messages, but I got carried away with some more stuff. So the policy itself, the International Protect and Release policy, doesn't have any exclusions in terms of pandemics. It doesn't have any exclusions in terms of COVID. So if you were to die from COVID, we would pay out. And like I said, we paid 6 claims in the last 12 to 18 months for COVID. Terminal illness cover, given the way COVID is, you're unlikely to be told that you've got less than 12 months left to live. With COVID, you are, if you get to a very serious stage, you are on ventilators. You are talking about days, weeks, months rather than 12 months. So again, you know, if it ever arose, it would be covered. But our experience and our medical knowledge would tell us that it's more likely to be a life claim. And if you're on a ventilator, you know, or you've slipped into an induced coma, then would you be able to fill in the form? So we'd have to look at different ways of administering the claim, but it certainly would be covered. Now, critical illness and total and permanent disability, you'll see from the 9 things covered under total and permanent disability and the 35 under critical illness, COVID isn't specified. So a diagnosis of COVID in itself doesn't mean you will get the lump sum payment. However, as this evolves, we're still not, medical practitioners, World Health Organization, epidemiologists around the world, they're all still uncertain of what the long-term complications are of COVID. However, should you get COVID and experience renal failure and require dialysis for the rest of your life as a secondary to that, then regardless of COVID being the underlying primary cause of your condition, we would still pay a claim. There is no caveats on this. As insurers, sometimes we get a bad reputation, but you know, we're here to protect people when they need it most. And right now, during a pandemic, is when we should be exposed to risk. We shouldn't be tightening our belts. We shouldn't be looking to say, let's put some exclusions on, let's reword our terms and conditions. We should be here to support our customers, which is, you know, hopefully what this product does. Just to reconfirm, there are no exclusions whatsoever. You would be covered.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. That's a very full answer. We have a question. I think this one's definitely for you, Darren, please. Is epilepsy considered as a critical illness, as it's life-changing mentally and physically? I'm quite interested in this, so I have a family connection with this condition. So Darren, once again, epilepsy, please.
Yeah, good question. Thank you very much. So it's not one of the 35 critical illnesses that's covered under the policy. The vast majority of petit mal and grand mal epilepsy, whilst they are life-changing to an extent, they're not deemed by the insurance market to be critical enough to warrant a lump sum payment in terms of making adjustments or altering your life. There are things like chronic organic brain disease, which is covered. So if epilepsy progresses and it actually starts to impact mental functioning more, then certainly it could be considered underneath that critical illness cover. But in terms of, you know, is epilepsy covered? The honest answer is no, it wouldn't warrant a payout.
Do we have any other questions? There's nothing in the Q&A at the moment, and nobody's got their hand up. Anybody? We're here to give you any help and advice that you might need. So it seems not. So thank you everybody who has attended today. I hope that the presentation has been of interest to you. Thank you, Darren, for your knowledge and expertise. It's very much appreciated. Without further ado, I'll close off the webinar rather, and wish you all enjoyable afternoon. Thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thanks.